The Nexus Vault had not been opened in 1,000 years, and Keeper Valth'zeen intended to keep his inspection brief. He descended through layers of spatial compression, his chitinous frame clicking against the ancient metal floors. The Karneth had built this place 47,000 cycles ago, back when they still believed some technologies were too dangerous to destroy, but too valuable to forget. Now it was just a tomb, filled with the failed ambitions of extinct species. The air tasted of ozone and regret. Valth'zeen's scanning appendage swept across rows of sealed containers, weapons that had consumed planets, navigation systems that had driven entire fleets mad, communication devices that had accidentally contacted things that should not be contacted, all dormant, all failures, all exactly as they should be. Then his scanner chirped with an anomaly. Container 4847 showed recent activity, not ancient recent, actual recent. Within the last 300 cycles, that was impossible. Valth'zeen approached the container, his four eyes adjusting to the dim emergency lighting that had somehow maintained itself for millennia. The seal was intact, but his scanner insisted something inside had been accessed, modified, and logged. He broke the seal with his administrative override, and the container split open with a hiss of escaping atmosphere that should have been stale for epochs. Instead, it smelled faintly of something organic, something that had been alive recently. Inside was the dimensional stabilizer, the cursed device that had cost the Karneth their finest engineers. It was a spherical construct of impossible geometries, designed to anchor reality itself within the vault's compressed space. The engineers had attempted to repair it 12,000 years ago, when its quantum core had shattered. They had declared it irreparable, then sealed it away as a reminder of hubris. Except now, resting on top of the device, was a datapad. A human datapad. Valth'zeen's breathing spiracles clenched shut. Humans were myths, legends whispered in the dark between stars. The tinkerer gods who had supposedly walked the cosmos before the current age, fixing what could not be fixed, building what could not be built, and laughing at the laws of physics while they did it. They were not real. They could not be real. His manipulation appendage trembled as he picked up the datapad. It activated at his touch, displaying text in the flowing script that had been dead longer than most civilizations had been alive. But his translator, designed by scholars who studied extinct languages as a hobby, flickered to life. Maintenance log. Entry. 447 date. 82.3 cycles ago. Adjusted for local temporal drift. Location. Nexus Vault. Karneth primary system. Device. Dimensional stabilizer. Model unknown. Catastrophically damaged. Status. Rated maintenance impossible by previous technicians. Performed. Action. Percussive recalibration. Struck device twice with kinetic. Adjustment tool. Result. Full operational restoration. Notes. Quantum core was not actually shattered, just sulking. Needed to be reminded it had a job to do. Recalibrated harmonic resonance by 0.03%. Left spare parts in compartment B7 in case it gets moody again. Do not let it know you think it is broken. It has feelings about that. Technician, T Maintenance Division, Human Engineering Solutions. The datapad slipped from Valth'zeen's grasp, clattering on the floor. He looked at the dimensional stabilizer. His scanner showed it was operating at 98% efficiency, better than when it had been originally installed. The quantum core that 12,000 years of Karneth engineering had declared irreparably shattered was humming with perfect resonance. Someone had hit it, twice, and fixed it. Valth'zeen ran. He ran through the spatial compression layers, through security checkpoints that had not seen traffic in centuries, through corridors that groaned at the sudden activity. He ran until he reached the surface facility and burst into the council chamber where the Echoes, the eldest of the Karneth, maintained their eternal deliberation. The humans, he gasped, his breathing spiracles working overtime. They are real. They were here. They are still maintaining our systems. The 7 Echoes regarded him with the patient disdain of beings who had seen a million false alarms. Keeper Valth'zeen, intoned Echo Primus, her voice like grinding stone. You have disturbed our contemplation of the 17 paradoxes with fairy tales. I have proof. He held up the datapad. A maintenance log, written in human script, dated 300 cycles ago. The dimensional stabilizer that we abandoned, it is working. Perfectly. Echo Secundus leaned forward, his ancient carapace creaking. Contamination. Or perhaps a prank by a junior keeper with too much time and not enough respect. Then, explain the stabilizer, Valth'zeen challenged. Explain how a device with a shattered quantum core is operating better than when it was new. Misdiagnosis, said Echo Tertius. The core was never truly damaged? 12,000 years of records are clearly in error. Valth'zeen felt his spiracles tighten with frustration. The Echoes had spent so long contemplating the unchangeable nature of reality that they had forgotten reality was surprisingly changeable when someone stubborn enough came along. I request permission, he said carefully, to conduct a full investigation. If I am wrong, I will accept reduction to Watcher status. If I am correct, then we have a situation that demands immediate attention. The Echoes conferred in subsonic frequencies that made the chamber vibrate. You may investigate, Echo Primus finally said. You have 30 cycles, and you may take one assistant. Choose wisely. Valth'zeen chose Priscanal. She was young, barely 400 cycles, and had a reputation for asking uncomfortable questions during engineering symposiums. Questions like, why do we assume this is impossible? And, have we actually tried hitting it? Which made the senior engineers sputter about protocols and establish methodologies. When Valth'zeen explained the situation, she did not laugh. She did not dismiss it. She simply said, show me. They returned to the vault together. Priscanal approached the dimensional stabilizer with the reverence of an engineer confronting a legend. Her scanning tools, far more sophisticated than Valth'zeen's administrative equipment, painted a detailed picture of impossibility. The quantum core is operating in a state that violates 6 fundamental principles, she said quietly. It should not work. It cannot work. But it is working anyway. How? I do not know. But look here. She highlighted a section of the device's housing. Stress fractures, recent. And here, chemical residue, organic, carbon-based. And here, she froze. Heat signatures, tool marks. Someone opened this device, made adjustments, and closed it again. Within the last year, Valth'zeen felt vindication and terror in equal measure. Who? How? Priscanal was already moving, following a trail only her instruments could detect. She led him deeper into the vault, into sections that had not been accessed since the ceiling. But there were footprints in the dust, not Carneth footprints, too small, too symmetrical, too impossibly light. They found more evidence in container 6223, a half-consumed package labeled emergency rations, edible by carbon-based life forms, 57 species approved, in what appeared to be 15 different languages. The package was dated 140 cycles ago. In container 8901, they found scorch marks on the walls, evidence of a plasma cutter used to access a sealed weapon system. The weapon itself had been disarmed and repurposed as a power generator, humming quietly to itself. And in container 9-4147, they found the security terminal. Priscanal activated it with shaking appendages. The holographic display flickered to life, showing archived footage from throughout the vault. She scrolled through years, decades, centuries of nothing. Then, 83 cycles ago, a figure appeared. The human was shorter than Valth'zeen had imagined from the legends, bipedal, as the stories said, covered in what appeared to be a patchwork environmental suit, held together with improvised repairs and what might have been actual adhesive tape. 2 manipulator appendages, 2 locomotive appendages, 1 sensory cluster positioned absurdly high on the body. She, the body language suggested female, though Valth'zeen had no frame of reference, approached the dimensional stabilizer with a handheld scanner. She studied it for several minutes, then consulted a datapad covered in handwritten notes. Then she picked up a metal rod from her equipment bag. She would not, Priscanal whispered. The human struck the dimensional stabilizer. Once, twice, sharp, precise impacts at specific points. On the housing, the device's status indicators, which had been red for 12,000 years, flickered, then turned green. The human checked her scanner, nodded in satisfaction, and spoke. The vault's audio receptors, ancient but still functional, caught her words. There, she said, in a language that the translator struggled to process. Maintained. She made a note on her datapad, packed her equipment, and walked away. Valth'zeen and Priscanal watched the footage in silence. Then Priscanal pulled up more files. More visits. The human had been here 17 times over the course of 200 cycles, performing maintenance on systems the Karnath had abandoned, fixing the unfixable with methods that range from sophisticated to absurd. In one clip, she repaired a gravity regulator by singing to it, apparently calibrating resonance frequencies by ear. In another, she bypassed a security lock by apologizing to it and explaining that she really needed to get inside. And could it please be reasonable about this? The lock had opened. "This is not possible," Priscanal said. "None of this is possible." And yet, they continued investigating, cataloging impossible repair after impossible repair. The human had maintained critical systems throughout the vault: life support, spatial compression, temporal stabilization, all while the Karnath had believed everything was safely dormant. On the 28th cycle of their investigation, the dimensional stabilizer failed. Not gradually, not with warning. One moment it was operating perfectly, and the next it was tearing itself apart in a cascade of spatial anomalies that threatened to collapse the entire vault into a singularity. Alarm screamed. Emergency protocols activated. Priscanal desperately tried to implement standard stabilization procedures, while Valth'zeen called for evacuation. Nothing worked. The Karnath engineering doctrine was clear. If standard procedures failed, escalate to senior engineers. If senior engineers failed, abandon the facility and seal the breach. But Valth'zeen remembered the footage. He remembered the human, standing before a device that could not be fixed, with nothing but confidence and a metal rod. He grabbed a maintenance tool from the emergency kit. "What are you doing?" Priscanal shouted over the alarms. "Something stupid," Valth'zeen replied. He approached the dimensional stabilizer, which was now writhing with spatial distortions that made his eyes hurt. He raised the maintenance tool, aimed for the same spots the human had struck, and brought it down. Once, the distortions intensified. Twice, the device went silent. The alarms cut off. Status indicators flickered uncertainly, then resolved into steady green. A cheerful diagnostic message appeared on the vault's main display, written in human script. "Percussive maintenance successful. Thank you for choosing Human Engineering Solutions." Valth'zeen and Priscanal stared at the message, then at each other, then at the maintenance tool in Valth'zeen's appendage. "I need to find this human," Valth'zeen said. "I need to understand how this is possible." Priscanal was already pulling up the maintenance logs. "The signature," she said. "Every log entry has a location signature. A trail. It leads to—" She paused, her spiracles contracting. "The void margin. The void margin. The region of space where navigation failed, where ships disappeared, where even light seemed reluctant to go. The cursed edge of known territory that every civilization avoided." "Of course," Valth'zeen said. "Where else would a human be?" Part 2. The Council of Echoes had forbidden the journey, which Valth'zeen took as confirmation he was on the right path. "The void margin is called void for a reason," Echo Primus had declared. "Nothing exists there. Nothing can exist there. You chase phantoms into oblivion." But Valth'zeen had seen the footage, had read the logs, had struck a device twice, and watched it come back to life with a cheerful message thanking him for choosing Human Engineering Solutions. Phantoms did not leave maintenance schedules. The transport vessel Priscanal had requisitioned, borrowed she insisted, though the paperwork was creatively interpreted, was old enough to predate modern navigation systems, which meant it could navigate by pure mathematical calculation rather than relying on the quantum mapping networks that failed at the margin's edge. "This is exciting," Priscanal said as they crossed into contested space. "We are either going to make the greatest discovery in Karnath history or become a cautionary tale told to junior engineers." "Possibly both," Valth'zeen replied. The void margin announced itself gradually. First the stars began to dim, not because of distance, but because light itself seemed to give up. Then their instruments started reporting contradictory readings. They were simultaneously moving forward and backward, up and down, existing and not existing. "Spatial anomalies," Priscanal reported, her voice tight with concentration. "Temporal distortions. Reality is negotiable here. I understand why ships disappear. Can we continue? If we are very lucky or very foolish." She adjusted their course based on the coordinates from the maintenance logs. Probably both. The structure appeared without warning, materializing from nothing as if deciding they were worthy of being seen. It was small, barely larger than a cargo depot, and built from a patchwork of materials that should not work together. Hull plating from 6 different civilizations, power conduits that violated 3 separate engineering philosophies, a docking port that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and it was operational. Lights glowed in viewports, atmosphere vented from cooling systems, a navigation beacon pulsed weakly, broadcasting a message in 100 dead languages. Repair Station Theta 7. All species welcome. Reasonable rates. Absolutely no refunds. She built a repair station, Priscanol whispered, in the void margin, where reality does not work properly. She built a repair station. They docked, the port adjusting itself to accommodate their vessel with mechanical cheerfulness, and entered through an airlock that cycled with suspicious efficiency. The interior was organized chaos. Workbenches covered with tools from 1,000 worlds. Diagnostic equipment jury-rigged together in ways that should not function but clearly did. Walls covered with handwritten notes, technical schematics, and what appeared to be jokes in multiple languages. One note read, "If device does not respond to standard maintenance, try asking nicely. If that fails, percussive recalibration. If that fails, apologize to device and promise to do better." Another, "Remember, quantum cores are sensitive. They prefer gentle encouragement and occasional compliments." A third, underlined heavily, "Coffee supplies critical. Ration carefully. Reality does not negotiate well without caffeine." Priscanol was examining a workbench where a dozen impossible repairs were documented step by step. She was methodical, she said. Every repair logged, every solution tested and retested. This is not divine knowledge. This is engineering. Practical, hands-on, trial-and-error engineering. Valth'zeen found a larger datapad, a personal log, rather than maintenance records. He activated it, and a holographic display bloomed to life. The human appeared, smaller than in the security footage, seated in what looked like a rest area. She was older now, her face lined with time and effort, but her eyes were bright with the satisfaction of work well done. "Personal log, Technician Torv'lin," she began, her voice carrying an accent that the translator struggled to place. "Cycle 1447 of solo deployment, or possibly cycle 1448. Temporal distortions make calendars more of a suggestion than a rule out here." She took a drink from a container labeled with unfamiliar symbols. "Completed maintenance on 17 critical systems this cycle. The Nexus Vault's dimensional stabilizer is getting temperamental again. It always does around this time. I have left detailed instructions in case I'm not available for the next service interval. The trick is confidence. These old quantum cores were built during the confidence era, when engineers believed machines could sense doubt. Turns out they were right." She smiled, and Valth'zeen saw something in that expression that transcended species. The satisfaction of a job done well, despite impossible odds. "Found another derelict station in Sector 88, she continued. "Life support was failing. No one has been there in 6,000 years, but I fixed it anyway. You never know when someone might need it. That's the thing about maintenance. You do it before it's critical, not after." The log continued through cycles of work. Torv'lin traveling alone through regions of space that civilizations had abandoned, fixing infrastructure that had been written off as irreparable, maintaining systems that no one remembered existed. She never complained, never questioned why she was doing it. She simply found broken things and fixed them, one stubborn repair at a time. "Why?" Priscanol asked the recording. "Why do this? Alone, in the dark, with no one to appreciate it?" As if in answer, the recording jumped to a later entry. Torv'lin was older still, moving more slowly, but her voice remained steady. "I know what you're thinking. Future person watching this," she said, looking directly at the camera. "Why did I spend my life maintaining systems for civilizations that forgot I existed? Why not return home? Why not rest?" She set down her drink. "Because someone had to, and I was already here." The recording showed her standing before a massive holographic map. Hundreds of systems, thousands of critical installations, all marked with maintenance schedules and repair priorities. Humans were never gods, she said. We were not the strongest species, or the smartest, or the longest lived, but we were persistently curious and stubbornly practical. She zoomed in on a section of the map. We looked at the galaxy and saw a million broken things that everyone else had decided were too difficult to fix. And we thought, what if they are not difficult? What if everyone just gave up too early? Another section of the map appeared, showing the void margin and surrounding territories. So we fixed them. Not for glory or recognition. Not because we expected gratitude. We fixed them because broken things should be fixed, and we happened to have opposable thumbs and an abundance of misplaced confidence. She laughed, a sound that the translator rendered as pure joy, despite the tiredness in her face. The secret to human engineering is simple. We do not believe in impossible. We believe in not yet figured out, and we are very, very patient about figuring things out. The recording shifted to show her workshop. I have maintained 4,847 critical systems across 200 sectors. Power generators keeping abandoned worlds habitable. Navigation beacons guiding ships through dangerous space. Life support systems waiting for the day someone might return. All of them written off as irreparable by civilizations far more advanced than mine. She picked up a maintenance tool, the same one she had used on the dimensional stabilizer, and I fixed them all with curiosity, stubbornness, and occasionally hitting them twice in exactly the right spot. The recording jumped again. Torv'lin was much older now, her movements careful and deliberate. This is probably my final log, she said. I am tired. I have been tired for a long time, but the work is documented. The methods are recorded. Anyone with patience and a willingness to try can maintain these systems. She pulled up a data file, coordinates and maintenance schedules for 17 critical installations still operating on her. Repair protocols. These systems need regular maintenance, every 100 to 300 cycles, depending on the device. I have left detailed instructions for each one. The tools you need are in storage bay 4. The spare parts are in bay 7 through 12. She looked directly at the camera again, and Valth'zeen felt as if she was seeing him across time itself. If you are watching this, you found me. Or rather, you found my work, and you are probably confused about how I did this. The answer is, carefully, and with many failures along the way. Here's what I learned. Machines are not mysteries to be solved by pure theory. They are puzzles to be understood through interaction. Talk to them, listen to them, learn their rhythms and preferences, and yes, sometimes hit them twice when they get stuck in their own logic loops. She stood, moving to a viewport that looked out at the impossible stars of the void margin. I came here because I wanted to explore. I stayed because there was work that needed doing. I remained because giving up is boring, and there's always one more thing to fix. To whoever finds this, the galaxy is full of broken things that everyone believes cannot be repaired. Prove them wrong, not because you are special, but because you are willing to try when others have stopped trying. She raised her drink in a toast to the camera. Maintenance is not glamorous. It is not celebrated, but it is necessary. And sometimes, the most advanced solution is knowing exactly where to hit something twice. The recording ended. Valth'zeen and Priscanal stood in silence, processing what they had witnessed. A human who had spent her life maintaining the forgotten infrastructure of dead civilizations, who had worked alone in regions of space where reality itself was negotiable, who had fixed the unfixable not for recognition, but because someone had to. The coordinates, Priscanal said finally. She left us 17 systems that need maintenance, systems that current civilizations depend on without knowing they depend on them. Valth'zeen accessed the files. Power generators supporting colony worlds, navigation beacons through hazardous sectors, dimensional stabilizers holding together compressed research facilities, all operating on Torv'lin's repair schedules, all waiting for someone to continue the work. We need to go back, he said. We need to tell the council. They will not believe us. Then we will show them. Valth'zeen downloaded every log, every recording, every maintenance schedule. We will show them that the humans were real, that they were not gods, but engineers, and that their methods work. They returned to Karnath space with evidence that could not be dismissed. The recordings, the maintenance logs, the coordinates to systems that should not work but did. The Council of Echoes had no choice but to listen. Echo Primus examined the data with trembling appendages. "This changes everything," she said finally. "Our entire understanding of engineering, of what is possible and impossible, was too limited." Valth'zeen finished. "We accepted impossibility too easily. The humans taught us that impossibility is often just impatience wearing a technical term." The Council authorized expeditions to the 17 systems. Each one confirmed what Torv'lin had documented: critical infrastructure operating beyond its theoretical limits, maintained by methods that violated established engineering doctrine, but worked anyway. The Karnath began to change. Slowly, because changing the thinking of an ancient civilization was like repairing a dimensional stabilizer. It required patience, persistence, and occasionally striking the problem from an unexpected angle. Priscanal founded the School of Percussive Solutions, teaching young engineers to question impossibility and try solutions that seemed absurd. The first lesson was practical. Students were given a device rated as irreparable and told to fix it using any method that worked. Most failed initially, but those who succeeded learned something fundamental: that creativity and stubbornness could accomplish what pure theory could not. Valth'zeen maintained Torv'lin's systems. Following her schedules and methods, he learned to talk to quantum cores, to encourage temperamental gravity regulators, to apply percussive recalibration with precision and confidence. He left his own logs, documenting successes and failures, adding to the knowledge that Torv'lin had begun. Other species began to notice. The Karnath, long known for their rigid adherence to engineering doctrine, were now solving problems that had stumped civilizations for millennia. Word spread of the human methods: practical, irreverent, surprisingly effective. Legends of the Tinkerer gods evolved. They were no longer mythical figures of impossible power. They were engineers who had walked the stars with curiosity and confidence, fixing what could be fixed, and teaching by example that most limitations were self-imposed. Torv'lin's repair station became a pilgrimage site for engineers across a dozen species. They came to study her methods, to learn from her logs, to understand how one being with limited resources had accomplished so much, and they learned the fundamental lesson she had spent her life demonstrating. The galaxy was full of broken things, waiting for someone stubborn enough to fix them. Valth'zeen stood in the Nexus vault, before the dimensional stabilizer that had started everything. It hummed contentedly, maintained according to Torv'lin's schedule. On the wall beside it, he had mounted a plaque written in human script and a dozen other languages. Here stood Technician Torv'lin, who proved that maintenance is not impossible, just improbable until someone tries. Below that, in smaller text, percussive recalibration protocols available in Storage Bay 4. And below that, barely visible, but absolutely essential: confidence required. Coffee recommended. Humans optional, but helpful. Priscanal joined him, carrying tools for their scheduled maintenance round. "Do you think she knew?" she asked. "That her work would change how we think about engineering?" Valth'zeen considered the question. "I think she knew that work well done has value beyond recognition, and that sometimes the most important thing you can do is maintain something no one else remembers to maintain." They began their inspection, following Torv'lin's protocols. Check the quantum core's resonance, complement its stability, adjust the harmonic frequencies by ear, and if all else failed, strike it twice with confidence and thank it for cooperating. The device responded perfectly, as it always did when treated with the proper combination of technical knowledge and irreverent practicality. Somewhere in the vast dark between stars, in regions where reality was negotiable and impossibility was just another challenge, Valth'zeen imagined that Torv'lin would have approved, not because they had made her famous, but because they had continued the work, because someone had to, and they were already here. The dimensional stabilizer hummed its agreement, maintained and functional, a testament to the day a human had looked at a device that could not be fixed, and decided that could not was just another problem waiting for the right solution. All it had taken was confidence, creativity, and hitting it twice in exactly the right spot. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5.